Yeah, you want to?
Sure.
Yeah, go for it before we.
All right. Are there any specific prayer requests?
Wisdom, knowledge, and guidance.
Got it. All right. Father, we thank you so much just for the privilege as pastors to be able to come to these meetings. Father, I pray that you'll give those on the board and people here wisdom and knowledge, Lord. And Father, we are so thankful for our school teachers and our administrators and the challenges that they have faced over the last 2 to 3 years, Lord. And I just pray that you'll just be with this meeting. And Lord, whatever needs there are, that you would just supply those needs according to your riches and glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:36. Sue is absent.
Here.
Giovanna?
Here.
Jim?
Here.
Jeff? Yes. And Randy?
Here.
They have a quorum. Would you all stand with me for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you everyone for being here. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Giovanna, a second?
Second.
I think Cameron beat you. Have a motion and a second. All in favor? That's everyone. And Mr. Huffington has some recognitions.
Yeah, some of these are a little bit late, but first I'd just like to congratulate our entire high school graduating class 2022. Had commencement ceremonies Saturday before last. Fantastic job by all of our seniors and all of our staff. So I just want to congratulate class of 2022. Baseball won district championship last week. I want to congratulate district baseball. Right now the plan is tomorrow evening, correct, Mr. Selke?
That's the plan.
So, but forecast is not looking favorable. We may have some alternatives out there, so I would just encourage everyone to check their phones and emails and be looking for calls in case we need to make a change. But I want to congratulate district baseball. We also had 3 track athletes qualify for the state track meet this upcoming weekend. J.C. Alexander in the discus, Kaylee Holt in pole vault, and Addison Hayden in both the 100 meter and the 200 meter qualified for state. So I just want to congratulate those athletes as well. And lastly, I just wanted to recognize Mr. Harvey. This is last week. Been, great to have him. It's been a huge resource for me personally, so I just wanted to thank him. That's it.
We have a presentation on esports from Michael Miller.
I know we got in here a little bit late, so I'll try not to take up too much of your time.
Takes a second for everyone.
Yeah. My name's Michael Miller. I'm a 16-year veteran teacher here at Oak Grove. I taught math before I transitioned into the technology integration coach position this year. I've coached, cross country, pole vault and track, girls basketball, and in 2015 I created a club over at the high school, and I called it Smash Club. We played a video game called Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, and I just did it because I love the game, and I knew other kids loved the game, so I wanted to create a space for kids to be able to come in and enjoy playing the game, meeting other kids that liked the common thing that they liked, have some social interactions. I ran 2 tournaments a year. We did a doubles tournament, a singles tournament. And so over the past couple years, I've been kind of seeing this esports stuff integrate its way into the high school, and kind of made a big trend in the colleges around 2016, and now it's moving its way into high school. And I just thought it'd be nice to get on the ground level, because colleges are giving away free money to tons of kids, and it's better to get in when they're just giving it away than to wait till they're looking for the upper echelon of kids, 10 years from now. So I'm here asking if the board will approve us to create an esports team. So I'll try to highlight some of the things that you've probably already seen in the packet that hopefully you've read through a little bit. Our team is myself. I'm kind of the director, coordinator of things, and wanted to get somebody who was already at the high school. So Trevor Adams said he would help be a coach. And then at the middle school, Hannah Gasecki said she would love to help coach those kids. So if we do it at the high school and middle school, it'll be nice because we can have the kids kind of transition into the high school level and already know what's going on. So what is esports? Just in case you haven't heard, it's electronic sports. This is what you would typically see online. It's multiplayer video games played competitively by professional gamers. I've been watching esports probably since 2013, 2014. I love it because I get the same thrill out of watching esports that I used to get when I would go to every Mizzou game and watch those, or any of the basketball or football games that I currently watch for our high school kids. You get that same sense of just seeing your team or seeing someone that you're rooting for succeed. So what is it at the high school, middle school levels? Well, it's just our kids doing the same thing, playing competitively or casually, depends on whether you're doing the esports competitive team, which is what we'd like to do. On the left side there, that is my Smash Club. Probably not the greatest picture because I wasn't really worried about taking pictures of kids. I just wanted to have fun. But this is what it might look like at the high school and middle school levels. These are all high schools and middle schools that have esports teams. So there are the same benefits that you'd see for just regular physical sports, you're going to see in esports, because you have collaboration, you have communication, you have teamwork, you have problem solving, because a lot of these games require strategy. If the other team has a better strategy, you're going to lose. I think it will instill confidence, and it will help kids overcome stress, because it is very stressful sometimes when you're in that competition mode. And these kids, if they're not playing physical sports, they don't get that, and so they get to have the chance to play at that level and have a little bit of stress, and then realize, hey, it's not so bad. Once you've done it a couple times, give them some more social interactions. We know in the past few years we've not had the greatest social interactions just because of the limitations that we've had to endure. So this will give those kids a little bit more sociability, a little bit more opportunity to do that. And then leadership skills. When I was doing Smash Club, I saw kids, without me prompting it, jump into leadership positions, whether it was, hey, can I go do the club fest? Can I lead that out? Can I help set up? Can I make sure that things are right with that? And then I had kids step up whenever kids were misbehaving, and they would say, hey, you're going to break some of that equipment. You don't need to be doing that. So leadership skills are part of this as well. And there's a ton of opportunities to learn, and this is where esports really shines, because that map over at the right side shows all of the different things that go into esports, whether it's coaches, theory crafters, analysts, organizers, live streamers. And I think we could start implementing and teaching our kids something about live streaming or broadcasting and commentating, web design if we need a web page, photography if we go to events and want to have someone be a photographer for that, marketing and team management. So there's tons of opportunities for our kids to start taking, just instead of just having it be a game, to transition into, okay, now how can I gain some skills that I can use in other careers that deal with information technology or engineering. So it also has the potential for some of these kids to increase student attendance. If a kid is going to enjoy what's happening after school. They're probably going to come to school if they were going to skip. Increase student classroom engagement, help students build healthy habits, because not only do we talk about limiting how much time we're spending on games, we're focusing on academics as well, but it's also eating healthy, staying hydrated, not getting into unhealthy habits that are going to deteriorate their health. It could potentially improve student GPA, excite students about the esports or other careers that are involved with that. And then for some of those kids, allow them to feel like they belong. I know I had tons of Smash Club kids that were not involved in anything else except for that. And I saw those kids come in and their just faces light up. So this has the potential to do that as well. We've got 2020, they handed out roughly $16 million in scholarships in North America. And I just listed, I'm in a Discord channel, which is a communication channel for a bunch of coaches in Missouri, and I just listed out the recruiter channel where all of these colleges asked, hey, do you got kids that are playing esports? We offer scholarships or something else. And look at this, Stevens College offers this coming year $7,000 base scholarship just to join their team. That's huge. That's money in the bank right there. Augustana College, $1,000 to $3,000 a year. A lot of prices I didn't put on there because some of them didn't display their prices. So they just said, hey, we do have scholarships, but you have to apply to get them. So there's tons of schools out there giving scholarships in Missouri and outside of Missouri. Maryville University near St. Louis is ranked #1 in the U.S. for the top esports school in 2021. They are 3-time esports national champions. I did not know that until just this year, but they were ranked #2 a couple years ago, and now they're ranked #1. So we've got right here in our hometown, Missouri, a #1 esports team. I thought that was pretty cool. So kids can also use this to talk to colleges and learn more about different kinds of careers. Several of these organizations that do esports or have esports curriculum got together and did a virtual conference with kids, and you can see there are 14,000 matches made, 1,782 conversations had, and if you'll notice in that right graph, the top 3 career field interests are STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, audio, video technology, and communication, and information technology. So, 60 to 70% of these kids are interested in those kinds of fields, and I think if we put this in our school, we're helping them connect to those fields because we can start implementing some curriculum that deals with that. I just did a very informal student interest poll on the TV that's in the high school as kids walk by to lunch, and I just said, hey, if OGHS had an esports team, which games would you be interested in playing? Because I wanted to know, do they want the free ones? Do they want the ones that cost money? Well, the Rocket League there, that's a free one. That's a nice one for kids to like. Got 18 votes on it. I had 25 responses. I'm unsure of how many responses I would have if I sent full-blown emails out to kids, but I didn't want to do that until I got approval from the board. So I just did an informal poll, and that will help us shape what our esports looks like. Here's what we'd like to do is offer an esports club at the high school and middle school levels and an esports team at both levels. And the difference is the club is just students are welcome to participate in our after-school esports games and activities in a non-competitive manner. So anyone who wants to be involved in that can. And then the team is students who will try out if that's necessary. We may only have a couple kids for a team that actually show up and say, I want to do this, so we may not need tryouts, but the team would try out for the competitive side of things. They'd attend practices and matches throughout the seasons, and there's 3 seasons in Missouri for the league that we would join, fall, winter, and spring seasons. This is the coaches that I've been talking with, the league that I've been talking with. It's called MOSFET, Missouri Scholastic Esports Federation. And that's their mission statement. It says they're dedicated to supporting middle school and high school esports teams across the state. Their goal is to help provide access to all students to engage in esports activities, as well as CTE activities, annual conferences, lab grants. So they started with 9 educators in 2019, and they've expanded now to over 100 schools, serving 2,000 plus students. And I've been in that Discord channel talking with a ton of coaches asking questions on, well, how do you guys do this? How do you do this? What's this look like? You know, what kind of things are you doing in your program? And they do summer camps just like volleyball and basketball does summer camps. And it's very informational. It's not just, hey, show up to this camp, play games. It's, hey, show up to this camp, and we're going to talk about careers that are in esports. We're going to talk about healthy habits that you can do. We're going to talk about eating healthy and hydrating and staying mentally prepared for things that come at you in other aspects of life. So I thought that was pretty cool, but I didn't want to undertake that in this first year. This is the big one, just funding. Startup costs are the highest. I ran my Smash Club completely without help from anything except for out of my pocket or a couple bucks here and there if we had a tournament. And so I look at finances as a big deal, and I try to keep it as minimal as possible, but you have to have something to play on, and so that's where the startup happens. And then when you buy that something, then you can use it year after year after year, and then sometimes you need to expand or upgrade, but that doesn't cost as much as that initial startup. So I've been looking at grants, donations, whether that's from businesses. I know some of our local businesses donate to other sports, and so maybe we could get them to help us out here, but mainly I've been looking at grants. I've got some fundraising ideas to get some money, but if we can pair up what we do with esports to what we can do in the classroom with curriculum, then the grants are a lot easier to happen, because they're looking for schools that are going to use these computers for other things, like whether it's creating or editing videos or broadcasting and everything else. This is probably the slide that you don't want to see the most, but they surveyed, most of surveyed 16 Missouri schools, and 88% of them provided their coaches and directors with some sort of stipend, and it ranges widely from as low as $500 flat rate for the whole year to $5,000 flat rate for the whole year, or 2% of the base salary plus additional steps for whatever step the teacher's on. And then I saw as high as 10% of the base salary, which even at $32,000 base salary is only $3,200. But at the bottom there shows what practices and some of the competitions would look like. And this is something I'm trying to figure out a little bit more as I go. But basically 2 to 3 times a week, the competitive team would have practice, and then they would have potentially 2 times a week matches as well, and then we'd have our club time during that competitive practices as well. So the kids that are doing the competitive stuff are actually doing it and being serious about it, just like they would for basketball or football or volleyball or anything else. So this is a picture of the middle school. So our ideal setup would be to have at least 10 gaming PCs. That would be my dream for the first year, but it may not be possible, and that's okay. Peripherals for each station, which is just your mouse, your mic, your headphones, so that kids can communicate with each other while they're playing, because they have to talk as a team and they can't just shout across the room. And then if we got 2 or more Nintendo Switches, we could start having kids that play Super Smash Bros. Ultimate could start practicing one-on-ones that could play against other schools online for their competitive matches. And then a few controllers for each of those Nintendo Switches, which are fairly cheap if you can get them on sale. Don't be fooled by all those computers in that lab. Probably none of those computers would run most of the games, but if we can retrofit any of those to somehow get some of the games, even if we started small with games that don't require a lot of graphics, I'd be all for that. And so if we find just a graphics card that'll run some of these games, I had Blue Springs told us they started with League of Legends Team Fight Tactics. I'd never even heard of that game, but he said it doesn't take very many graphics, and they started with that in the first year just to get kids involved. And he said most of the kids learned that the year that they came in because no one had ever played it. My expectations would be that the students in esports would follow the same type of rules as the students in athletic sports. That academics is always first. They would be expected to be in attendance at school on the days that eSport Club meets or has competition. and they're expected to maintain 2.0 or above GPA, no failing grades. And that was the expectation I had for the Smash Club that I ran from 2015 to 2021. Just because I know that that stuff's important, and I had a lot of kids that came in that didn't meet those expectations, but we were able to have those conversations, talk with their teacher, get them to work on homework during club time, get them help if they needed it, and hopefully that helped some of those kids that were interested enough turn their grades around if they needed to. There's also a good luck, have fun sportsmanship contract that students would sign. You can see these bullet points here. Be a good sport whether I win or lose. This is for kids to sign a paper and say, know that the people online are real people. My words have impact, so if I shouldn't be saying things that I shouldn't be out of my mouth against them. Set a positive example with their behavior. And I think our kids are really good at this already, but this is just kind of that backup plan of you signed this, you know this is expected of you. Speak up against discrimination, harassment, and abuse. Show integrity by honoring the rules. Opponents and teammates. Stop, listen, and assess if someone says their behavior is inappropriate. And sometimes kids that play video games don't have the best social skills, so that we're teaching them, hey, what you're saying is not appropriate. Let's talk about this. Respect others, even if their opinions are different. And the same goes for what we expect our athletic kids to do too. The future of what I would see 5 years out, obviously more gaming PCs so that we can play more Nintendo Switches so we can have more kids involved. But I would hope that it would get to student-led live streams. Right now I stream the football game at the high school at the stadium, and I would love for some students to take ownership of that, as well as something like their esports. Get the kids involved in setting up the live stream and learning about how that works, because that's a skill that they can take on out of high school, use it in college, use it in a job. Student-led commentary, man, what a way to get these kids. We have speech and debate, we have speech classes, but this will help some of those kids kind of work on their speech skills. And then I would love if at some point we could get the curriculum and courses aligned with STEM subjects at the high school. And I know we do some things right now. We have a computer science class, but always offering more classes that kids would be interested in the STEM field is always good. So there's a few of them listed up there. And then have a dedicated esports room, because right now I'm looking at the middle school lab, and with as many kids that might show up, I don't know if that's big enough. So if you have questions, I'm free to answer them. I may or may not know the answer to it, though.
How many kids did you have participate when you did before?
I had about 30 show up and say, yeah, I'm all for it, but maybe 15 to 20 were consistent. And then over the years, it depended on what happened, because I had some kids that were super involved, had to go get jobs, and then they didn't come as often. I had some kids that started track or other sports, and they didn't come as often. But then we'd always get a fresh new batch of freshmen that would come in, and they'd come in and start learning the ropes, and then they'd stay for a couple of years, and then they'd start getting jobs. So I'd say probably about 15 to 30 were signed up. I'd say 15 at least would be consistent with it. So, and we were only playing one game. This would allow us to play several games, so we could probably get more kids in.
Wellington has esports, doesn't it? How did they fund start?
Luckily, we'd written a grant, a before grant, to upload our business classroom computers, which we worked with our technology department to make sure that it was the right computers for both business classes and for esports. So equipment-wise, we had our coach volunteer the first year, just make sure we were going to sustain numbers and see numbers, and when they doubled, we started paying a coaching stipend.
Thank you.
Which is typically what some other schools have also seen as well, as far as second and third years. They're starting to get stipends because their administration is starting to get on board, which is expected. I didn't want to not put that slide up there because I just feel that our time is valuable, so I don't want it to not seem like it isn't. But the three of us that have signed on for this team feel that this is good for our kids, so we'll do whatever we need to make it happen.
Well, I just want to appreciate not only your coming forward to bring it back again, but also you're thinking it through from what it is, the impact, the connection that it has to career, the impact that it has on students, because it definitely hits a population that doesn't always have an opportunity to be competitive. And I will just say personally, my son in 6th grade, he knew through Scouts an older student that was in the Smash Club, and that's all he has talked about. And he's getting ready to be a freshman, so that if it's not there, he's going to be pretty devastated. So, but I think he's an example of like a student that wants to be involved and wants to be engaged, but is not necessarily an athletic child. He's a lot of skills, but that just isn't for them.
And there's a lot of those kids out there, and they're fun. They're fun kids, but they never have that chance to just perform and show somebody like, hey, look what I can do. And a lot of people think it's just playing this video game. But if you watch any top level players, I mean, I play some of these games, and if I watch top level players, I just go, I don't. How do you do that? How do you do that with your fingers? How do you think that fast? It blows my mind. And it's just like when I used to watch Michael Jordan play basketball. It blew my mind. I had no idea how he did some of the stuff that he did. So
I'm clueless, but is this what Kaufman Stadium or something? All those people, or was it Arrowhead?
It could have been. I know they do have arenas, like I'd put in your packets. The 2021 League of Legends National Championship had 73 million viewers. Now, obviously, they aren't all sitting in the stadium, but they could put 50,000 in a stadium easily, because I've seen pictures of it. The very first picture in the slide had a large stadium with that. So.
Is Misha talking about?
Misha's trying to, but the problem with Misha is they'll want to come in and they'll want to limit everything and take your money and give you nothing in return, because there's already been several schools that have been in talks with them, and they want to charge you this fee and this fee and this fee, and then potentially charge you to live stream it, but they don't give you anything in return. Whereas with MOSEF, it's a group of coaches like myself that have just gotten together and said, hey, $50 for a varsity team, $25 for a JV, if you can swing it. If you can't swing it, that's fine, because they want everybody to be able to play and not be limited. And what I've seen running the football live streams, Misha takes a lot of money there, and I know they give us a cut, but it's different there because they're the ones hiring all the referees. They're the ones putting up the starters and everything. Esports doesn't require that. The coaches can do everything. And so you don't need someone else standing in as a third party saying, let's try to control this. So I would rather not go with Misha,
I'm good with that.
And they want to monopolize everything.
Yep.
And I don't want it to be monopolized. I want us to be able to do it and do it without having to pay a whole bunch of money to them.
From a coaching standpoint, when they come after school, I'm trying to wrap my head around that part of it. Is there? Just come in, you introduce them, and they start playing? Or are you actually coaching them on technique?
For the competitive,
every time you're doing 15 minutes of kind of what you talked about, the ethics of things.
Part of that's, and I don't know a lot what that looks like, just because I haven't done it, but I've talked to coaches that have, and so I would pick their brains on like what kind of things do you do to gear kids up, but you have to get them ready mentally, and part of it is you're talking, say there's a game that has a map, and you're talking about what the map looks like and what the strategic spots are. And if they've played some matches, you can go back and look at game footage just like you would in football, and you can say, now what did we do wrong here? And there's a lot of analyzation going on. So that's why analyst was part of the career, is because you'll sit and watch game film and talk about what you did wrong and what you did right, because if you don't, you're going to go play that team again, possibly, and lose again if you lost the first time. So yeah, there is that, but there are segments of gameplay, and there are segments of teaching, and there are segments of analyzing. And so a lot of the coaches that I've been in talks with have talked about this summer, like, hey guys, let's play some of these games so that we can learn from each other on how better to teach our kids and coach our kids, because not everybody, like I don't play a lot of the games that sometimes that the kids will be playing, so I need to learn too. But I know Smash pretty well, but some of the other ones I know. So yeah, there are segments that go along with it. Now for the kids that are coming to play just casually, we'll teach them some stuff too, but we're not going to be so focused on them as far as, hey, you need to look at this, you need to look at this, because we're just letting them come and have fun and learn a few things, and maybe they'll jump into the competitive side in the years to come. So
tonight you're asking us commission as a board to start up esports again, or are you asking for, I mean, the numbers in here for the money, or?
I'm just asking for approval to start esports. I'm not asking for any money or anything like that. Just the approval so that we can start talking about how this thing gets going. And I brought my Switch in for the club. I'm sure we can bring that stuff in and have kids bring their own Switches in and just get something started. So I'm just asking if we can get the ball rolling. I'm not asking for any money right now, because hopefully if we can get some grants and everything, then it's all funded from that, or funded from if we have any excess in the technology department that we think we can use for this and something else, since we're at the middle school, to use for the middle school curriculum.
Thank you for your enthusiasm.
Absolutely.
For doing this. It's fantastic, I think.
I'll move
Thank you, Joanne.
to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. I have a motion and a second to approve esports moving forward. All in favor? That's everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's gonna start in the fall.
Yes. And we'll keep you updated if we want to come back and do a presentation before December. We'll keep you updated on it.
They're past due for next year.
We have another teacher at the high school that does it as well, so even if this didn't work, we still have it.
He took over the other teacher
Yeah.
took over my Smash Club.
Awesome. Okay. Next, we have a construction update.
Yeah, construction is progressing nicely at the elementary school. They have begun to build back after all the demolition. They've poured concrete and they're starting to frame exterior walls. Should see that framed in the next 2 weeks. It's going really well. The lower restrooms are almost ready for paint. They've started working on the upper hallway and restroom. Now the school has been dismissed. So lots of positive things happening at the elementary school. As far as the high school, primary, and middle school, they walked more punch list items today to mark those off. And those are progressing, but we still have some work to do on those. So that's kind of a current construction update. Mr. McLean, is there anything you'd like to add?
No?
Okay, once again, I'd like to thank Mr. McLean and Mr. Tripp for a lot of guidance through this process. They've done a tremendous help and dedicated countless hours to help and oversee that. So.
Questions? Entertain a motion to approve the construction update.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Cameron. Have a second? Thanks, Jim. All in favor? That's everyone. On to the budget.
Okay. On page 66 of your board packet, there'll be kind of an overview of current financial, 62. 62, this is the balance sheet, year progressing. If you look at that, the first part of that on page 62 are the revenues. You'll see percent realized, that's where we are in the current budget. One thing that you'll notice on that is the very first line, 5111, current taxes. If you'll see year-to-date activity, which is the third column over, 8.8 million. This time last year, the very far right column, we're at $7.955 million in there. So revenues on our balance sheet are coming through. You can see those, and then your expenditures start at the bottom of the first page and roll over to the second page. And the one thing, these numbers are somewhat skewed on the expenditure side. On that second page, almost the entire way down, 6521 capital construction. While we sold our bonds last year, over the last 2 years, and a small amount this year, we're incurring some of those additional costs now. So you'll see, so it kind of plays tricks with your numbers. It looks like that we're way over budget, but in fact, we sold bonds last year and we're just now incurring those expenses. So that's why on the expenditure side, it can look a little bit skewed. But that's a really good sheet to use, kind of year-to-date expenses to track where we are. And then I've also got a preliminary look at next year's budget. Wanted to give that to you, and that's on the screen behind you. Mr. Miller, can you also turn on this TV screen right? Oh, you have it on. Okay, very good. So I wanted to give you some preliminary budget numbers for the upcoming school year. I really just kind of highlighted some of the major points, and I've printed those off on that sheet for you. Under assumptions and projections, right now the state of Missouri is experiencing an unprecedented surplus of funds. That comes from a lot of different areas, but with some of the stimulus money and the COVID relief money that the federal government has dispersed, now the state is collecting those as taxes. So the state has an actual surplus of money right now. The district is also capturing federal COVID relief funds ourselves through ESSER 1, 2, and 3. Property taxes and property values continue to be strong for 2022. All of these things help our financial situation within the district, but I want to make special note of the fourth line down right there. It says all of these financial resources are important to the Oak Grove School District, but caution should be taken as these are most likely short-lived funds. We anticipate a correction in 1 to 2 years. In other words, some of the surplus that we're seeing from the state, we anticipate that being very short-term, 1 or 2 year in most cases. So we try and use caution with that. We really are happy with our property values right now, and hopefully those will continue. But some of these state funds are very short-lived. We do recognize that. We want to use caution on obtaining those funds. The following preliminary budget numbers are projections for the upcoming school year. Final approval for the 22-23 budget will be presented at the June board meeting. I want to give you some preliminary numbers. I would have ran you copies of this, but it was 90 pages in color. So I decided I emailed it to you, but I wanted to just put it up on the screen here. I highlighted some of the more noticeable differences between this year and projections for next year. First one there is line 8, current taxes. You'll see that if you look at the current year of 21-22, which is once again the third column over, compared to the previous year, which is 2021, you'll see an increase there of $1.3 million. We had a strong new construction growth from last year. When we did the budget last June, we noted we had $3 million in new construction, so that accounts for a large portion of that. Also, you'll notice that our delinquent taxes have almost been cut in half, so people are paying their taxes on time. So we'll see an increased number in our current and a decrease in our delinquent taxes, so because we collect those as well. So I noted those changes there on lines 8 and 9. On line 192, Mr. Muller, if you could just scroll down for me, please. These are revenues, by the way. On 192 is the state transportation funding. Traditionally, the state has underfunded transportation. What I mean by that is there's actually a state statute that they're supposed to reimburse us for 75% of our transportation costs, our bus costs. This year we've been at 17%. So we've been majorly overfunded in transportation. The state has proposed in the state budget to fully fund transportation for the upcoming school year. Anticipate these being 1 or 2 year funds. If the state fully funds us at 75%, that'd be an increase of about $330,000 to our budget. We did not account for it currently because the state has not passed the budget. The governor has not signed it. Traditionally, they do that in mid-June. So hopefully when we do our actual budget, we have some solid numbers on that. But we did not account for that in our current transportation budget request. Line 206, High Needs Fund. We're capturing some of those funds we haven't captured in the past. That's line 206. That's federal money related to special education and IDEA. That was in 1 and 206. 209, ESSER 3. This is some of those COVID relief funds. Look very closely at that one. In budget year 2021, we just actually collected this money last week, $1.97 million related to ESSER 3. We received reimbursement from, it came from DESE, but it's actually federal money. We've already collected that. We anticipate another $482,000 that we can capture in the future. These are one-time funds. These are federal funds related to COVID relief. So very nice numbers that we'll see right there. Those are one-time funds.
When do ESSER 3 funds have to be encumbered by?
September 2024.
Okay.
They're considering extending that to 2026.
But based on your spend rate, you could easily do it by the next school year.
Correct. These are the remaining funds, the $482,000. Those are actually, you can call them restricted funds. We have to, those funds are allocated to address learning loss for our students incurred over the last 2 school years. So there are some restrictions placed on those funds, but we've got a game plan for those to address some of our curriculum.
So there's
needs.
no more of like so all the 1.9 that's been encumbered so far are recognized, or is really what you have as far as the play. So okay.
Correct. Line 232, the sales tax increase. Sales taxes, there's really 4 areas that we as a district collect revenue from: property taxes, the state funding formula, sales tax, which is Prop C. So this is your sales tax. The state is seeing a surplus in that. You can see last year it was 1.8 million. We should get back on track to some of those previous years of approaching $2 million. I think it's actually going to be stronger than that. We use it's really impossible to predict that number. So we went back and used some of our previous years where it was more consistent in the $1.9 million range. But we anticipate being a little bit stronger with our Prop C, our sales tax. 246. We're still calculating. This is our state funding formula. This is how we're paid through the state. They do that on an attendance basis. These numbers, we're still calculating these. To be honest with you, I think that number, we simply rolled that over from last year. That one's going to be a little bit in flux. I actually think that number is going to be a little bit less than the 1.8 that we have right there. Our attendance is actually down slightly from previous years. We were down about 35 students this year overall. So there's a lot of things that account for that, but so that state basic formula, that's still being calculated. 252 is the classroom trust fund. That's one of the other 4 areas that we collect the majority of our revenue from. That is actually gaming or gambling money. The state has indicated that once again, that number is going to be fairly strong. So we went back to more of a traditional view on that. And we should see quite an increase. And then 324, last thing with our revenues, you'll see we had bond sales last year, which once again, those are going to skew our numbers for our revenues because we sold $2.5 million in bonds this school year. We won't be selling those next year. So that changes your revenue number slightly. You can see the $20 million from the previous year too. So any questions on revenues? We really get revenues from several sources. But that's what we're anticipating for next school year. Okay, we'll look at expenditures. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Kind of the same process here, line 142. You'll see some discrepancies in our salaries. This is an example of middle school teaching salaries. You'll see previous year was 1.5 million. Upcoming school year, we're anticipating 1.436. We had some retirees, but that really doesn't account for that. And what that is, that's a coding. When the state changed some of their coding, it depends on where people are paid from to what code it's tied to. So there's really not that large a discrepancy in our teacher salaries. It looks like it on here, but it's just how we code those. So you really won't, that's really not a huge discrepancy there. But I did want to point those out for our expenditures. 688, Mr. Miller, I appreciate you doing that. That is, if you remember last year, we had changed to our services from Centerpoint, so that is accounted there. 1363, Mr. Miller, you can see there's quite a few expenditure codes. We're up into the 1300s already. 1363, staff relations. If you remember last year, the board approved a job description for people in the district. That accounts for that 119, if you remember that right at the end of the year. This year, we don't have that, so you'll see a reduction in expenditures there. That's noted. 1580. So in 1580, there's another example of recoding things to the proper area. That wasn't coded correctly before, so we're just changing some coding. 1654, I really want to make note of this one. 1654 to 1663. I highlighted this entire area. If you notice, these are our utilities. And we entered into the service contract, performance contract with Navitas. I would like for you to look back to the last time we actually had a quote-unquote regular school year. If you look at, you got to go all the way back to 1819. Electricity at the high school, which is 1655 right there. In 1819, the electrical bill was $169,000. With our performance contract, this year, we're less than half that, and we only have a month to go. So that extra is really noted in our performance contract with Navitas. So you got to go back a couple of years. We should get more accurate numbers moving forward, because this is our first full schedule year, so we have to compare it to 1819 to this year, and we still have a couple months to go. But you can see a noticeable improvement there. And in our budget, we put in our old numbers because we want to get an updated year before we adjust our expenditure numbers. So we should see very noticeable improvements in our utilities. And I'm going to refer back to that when I get to the end of this. So really positive things we're seeing from the performance contract. 1687, Mr. Miller, thank you again. 1687, this was the transportation supplemental wages. If you remember, we were in a very dire bus driver shortage at the beginning of the school year. The board approved doing something about it, and we went out there and helped our drivers and got more drivers. I'm happy to say we had a full fleet of buses and drivers for the entire school year. I know some of our neighbors, they were short, a district that's very comparable to us, with I think one more bus route than us, was short 5 drivers the entire school year. So this really accounted for that. We placed that in our budget again this year, but I think that's a discussion we'll want to have moving forward with First Student on whether the board wishes to continue that program or not. But I did want to make note of that. 1698, right below that, bus fuel. We wanted to account for the massive increase in diesel especially, so we tried to account for it in our budget. It's kind of hard to tell where that's going to go, but we did want to at least account for it. 1801. Once again, these are expenditures. 1801, that is our payments on our bonds. Or actually, those are construction expenditures in 1801. You can see that we had large expenditures in 2021 and 2022. We have a small amount of actually bond money remaining for those expenditures. So we're starting to wrap some of that up, but that skews your numbers considerably. Underneath there in 1804, then we start making those bond payments, which is part of our debt services levy. So that's all been calculated and accounted for. It's almost like an automatic debit. And then in 1806, you'll see the bond interest. We pay interest on those bonds just like you would any sort of loan that you take out. And the last one in there, 1807, that is our lease payment. Our Navitas contract, our performance contract, was actually a lease purchase. That is not part of your debt services levy. You pay for that just out of your general operating fund. And we start making our first payment towards that lease, which we supplement with, going back to our utilities, we said the savings we were going to see in our utilities would help with our lease purchase. So that the savings in utilities is paying for that lease. So that's where they kind of offset each other. So that's kind of what to expect in our upcoming budget. Overall looks very positive, but we also understand those funds are very short term.
So I noticed when you were sharing out the salary piece that you highlighted, like the middle school, and it seemed like all the middle school expenses are together. When the budget's presented this year, is it gonna be possible to see not only the overall district breakout, but also the building breakout of budgets then?
Absolutely, we can do that, sure.
Perfect.
Any other questions for Tom? Okay, thank you, Tom. Entertain a motion to approve the presentation by Tom for the preliminary budget.
So moved.
Thank you, Giovanni. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. All in favor? That's everyone. Next on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda items. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Thank you, Giovanni. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jamie.
Question about Hollison Miller invoice is, where are we with final payments toward them?
We are still having those discussions. No real progress, but we are discussing that final payment.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to, I guess where I'm going with that is that we have, that we maintain some leverage with unanswered questions.
Correct.
Yeah.
To be clear, this isn't the final payment.
Correct.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda items. All in favor? That's everyone, thank you. Now Tom's gonna present to us on the governor's proposed pay increase for teachers.
Okay, earlier this year, the governor had made a note that Missouri's towards the bottom of teacher salaries and starting teacher salaries specifically. So he challenged the legislature to address starting teacher pay to raise the state minimum to $38,000. The legislature, both the House and the Senate, did pass that. It is now on the governor's desk for approval. Traditionally, he signs the budget in mid-June, right before we have to have our own budget approved. So that is still up in the air. I have full confidence that the governor is going to sign that portion of the budget. It is a voluntary program. It's reimbursed through the state. School districts do not have to participate in that. We have a very high priority on taking care of our staff and doing what we can to support staff. So we're actually working on several different scenarios on how to best address that with our staff. So we're well aware of what's going on at the state capitol. We are working on plans for that, and once the governor signs the budget, then we'll have some more concrete ideas. But I just want to kind of put that out there, that it is a top priority for both the state and Oak Grove School District.
I think it's important for the general public to know that this is a 70-30 split, but that doesn't take in the benefits either. And then also this with 38,000, I think that'll move us to about 42 or 43, up from 50.
I think one of the things as we're looking through this, I think it is, like you said, a priority that we, even though it's voluntary, that we consider how we can do it, but also being sensitive to wage compression, that we're not compressing the wages of others and how that is factored in to make sure it's not a stagnant first 3 years of a teacher's career. Knowing that it could go away, but hopefully we have a strong enough advocacy group as well to help to keep it going, but just really watching for that wage compression.
And I'd like to commend the board, because this has been something that's been important to the board for a long, long time, and I think the school board has done a fantastic job of keeping pace as best we can, and we recognize this when the board approved the increase to the salary schedule earlier this year. It's only 6 our steps on our entire pay scale that we're not at 38,000. So I just want to commend the board for making that a priority for a long, long time. So it'll make it much easier on us than it will be on other districts.
So you're just asking us to approve your presentation, we're not making any decisions?
That's correct. Yeah, we need to get a final budget from the governor first, but I have full confidence he's going to sign that. So we've got several plans that we've been working through.
Any other questions or comments? Entertain a motion to approve the presentation by Tom as presented.
Make that motion.
Thank you, Tamara. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. A motion and a second. All in favor? We have contractors for some capital improvements.
Yes, and this is really just kind of an update and want to kind of put it out there to the public. We've got several capital projects that we're trying to tackle over the course of the summer and the fall. So we will be advertising those, and Focus on Oak Grove will have a page on our webpage for various companies, services, contractors, whatever you want to call them, to bid on those. So please be on the lookout for those. We'll try and advertise those as best as possible. There's some projects in the district that are higher priority than others. We're trying to tackle those as best we can. So really, for this specific motion, nothing solidified on any contractors and things, but we want to just make it known we are looking at some capital improvements around the district, and we'd like as much local support as possible, and trying to gauge as many different contractors and services as we can. So we'll be advertising that in the very near future.
What are some examples of some of the improvements?
Well, as part of our, originally in our bond, we had some elementary improvements, such as paint, ceilings, flooring still in there. We're redoing our teacher workroom, but we've pulled those things out, trying to get more value for our dollar. So we're going to try and shop those out ourselves. So some grounds, tree service around the district, things such as that. It's a pretty extensive list. So.
Okay, great.
Thank you for that. Is there a motion second to approve that presentation? Thanks, Jim.
Do we need one?
Do we need one?
No.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Tree bids.
Yes, we did take several tree bids. If you look at the back of your packet, those start on page 105. We had 4 tree companies come in and bid various projects around. We've got beautification in front of all of our buildings. We've got some dead and weakened trees that we'd like removed in our pond area, around all of our buildings, just grounds in general. Acuff Arbor had placed a bid, broken out into phases. There's a bid, Farage tree and stump removal. That one may be hard to see. Hill tree service, and then Woodchuckers, LLC. So those are broken down. Some are total scope, some are by the day. They're all fairly, they are apples to apples, even though bids came in somewhat different.
Because like the day rate, like they didn't put like how many days they anticipated?
Approximately 3 weeks.
Okay. So 15 working days or?
Well, 10 working, I'm sorry. 10 working days was kind of a cap.
Okay.
And that was something that, in looking at these, I can go back and redefine the scope somewhat. I think there'd be some benefit to redefining that. But we had talked about kind of prioritizing and putting a cap on the number.
Like a not to exceed, or like?
Not to exceed, correct. Because we may not be able to get to everything right now, but there are some beautification needs around the district. Storm damage in the past, construction damage, and just some things that, have taken higher priority in the past, but now it's a good time to address those with our new construction of buildings. We want to try and get the campus looking as nice as we possibly can.
And realistically, especially when it comes to trees, I mean, if you talk to Evergy or West Central, they, about every 5 to 7 years, they have a company they bid out because trees grow, limbs get down, and stuff happens, so.
So did you have a recommended contractor based on the bids, or are you?
I don't, to be honest. Great question.
I didn't.
Yeah, so you're asking for our approval on one of these, or?
We can go back and redefine the scope.
Because I mean, you have a range
Kind of
from
narrow it
32 to
down.
50, right? Like our third,
Yeah, the 8 cups, I think it's 28.
because Woodchuckers is 40, Hill is 34, Farage is, if it's 2 weeks, that's 50,000, and then the other A cup is 32.1. So that's the low bid, 32.1. So I guess it depends.
Yeah, I mean, budget-wise, where should we be at? I mean, are we trying to stay under 20? Do we need to dial the scope back? Or do these, all these things have to be done?
They're not, like, we kind of prioritize, I think, 40,000 would be our ceiling.
Right.
And they're all aware that there could be a scope reduction.
Wait, I'm reading A cups wrong, because their first cover of the 17.6, is that in totality of the 4 phases? Or the
Correct.
different,
So they're by far.
so
the
they're,
largest.
yeah,
So-
I added all those bid
Yeah, I was
sheets
adding.
together.
Yeah, so
And that may be beneficial to go back and redefine the scope somewhat, and get a little more specific on this.
It looks like they're far and away, have the most detailed quote also.
Yeah, I would say based on what you have, I would think that if you entered into conversations,
Yeah.
it's based on numbers, but I don't know.
What do you need from us, Tom?
Well, you can approve one of these to move forward, or we can go back, redefine the scope, and then bring it back. And towards a little more apples to apples. But I just want to give you an example, and what I'm finding out is, as we go out and bid some of these jobs, it's, sometimes you get the bid right away, sometimes it's, delayed for whatever reason, because we bid more than just trees. And so I guess it's how specific do we need to be, so we can go back and redefine the scope slightly and to where it's much easier to compare.
I mean, but they were all working off the same scope to begin with.
That's correct. We toured the campus together. I went around with each contractor and pointed out specifics, what areas were higher priority, which areas were lower priority.
If I'm reading this right, the first bid in here is significantly less than the other ones, not including the guy who just charged us by the day. I mean, is there a reason not to? I mean, is there something not included in this scope? Or should we just nail this down, or are you more comfortable coming back in June with the recommendation?
Well, tree service is something that if it spills over in the fall, it's okay. Obviously, we'd like for them to be working when school's not in session, so we could come back, redefine the scope, make sure it is comparable in June. That's okay.
What you want to do?
I mean, yeah, I guess that's the question.
That's the
I mean,
question,
this
'cause it looks
bid,
like
in comparison,
if we're-
I think it's rather you
If you're
negotiate with
if you're
them.
comfortable with the first one, and to me, it's the most detailed bid, and it's the least
Yeah,
expensive.
you're gonna redefine those other ones to a higher number.
Yeah.
You're
Right,
not
but
gonna
I
happen,
don't know that there's any benefit in more
I would
time
just say-
invested by you.
Is there a benefit
With
to
them.
doing phase one and seeing how well it went and how thorough they were and saying, hey, based upon that, we'll move on from there? I mean, they broke it down into 3 phases. I mean, we don't have to give them the whole farm, just, fine, let's go do phase one and see how that goes, and we'll talk about 2 and 3 from there.
Okay.
Because they broke out that, so it could just be with, yeah.
And that's kind of how we prioritize. So Oak Grove High School, for example, that is all of the trees that are directly next to the building, including the east drive, all of those oak trees. We're gonna be trimmed, lifted and trimmed, going down the east drive, the property line, cleaning up that fence row.
Getting all the dead out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the only ones that complete it at maintenance, or 1-year maintenance.
I mean, I don't, to me, if it's that much less and they're just detailed, why not just, I mean, if we get through phase one and they're doing an awful job, we can always fire them, right?
You can approve one phase, sure.
I mean,
I mean, if that's the
would you rather us
priority.
do one, or would you rather us just approve the whole thing? What do you think
One.
is best? Okay. Okay. Somebody like to make a motion to approve phase one for A-Cup Arbor Care?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Jeff. In the amount of $7,000.
I would probably lean toward Woodchuckers LLC. That's Derek Bell. He's an Elk Grove grad. He has a lot of experience in it. He can work weekends. And if we were just gonna look at a phase where we looked at a small amount of maybe just that 4,000,
So that's for 1 day of
But
work.
that's for one day, as opposed to being spelled out.
1 day, and it doesn't include the,
I can go back and read the
Maintenance.
fine still and get a little clearer picture.
well,
of-
but that's if we're going through a fair bid process, I mean,
I mean, his scope doesn't include anything, any of the details on what he's gonna do. It's just a day rate, basically. I don't think his compares even close. I have a motion on the table for phase one for $7,000 for A-Cuff. Do I have a second?
1 second.
Mr. Bowman? I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 4-2. I have one more thing on the agenda. I received notice and talked to Sue Alexander today because of the health concerns and things she has going on in her life. She has decided to resign her position on the board. She has 1 year left in her term. As a board, we have a policy for filling that position. Pass these down here, just so all the board members are aware. I've talked to all the board members about this. But just so you guys are aware of what we do. 2, 3. So the board will start the process, which includes this announcement here in open session. I believe you can see in the requirements there, we have to post it to the paper, put it on our website, and basically take applications. It doesn't, in my reading of it, and please correct me if I'm wrong as you guys look through this, spell out what that looks like, other than I guess we would ask for some sort of letter from anybody interested to explain why they're interested and why they think we should appoint them to the board. And then I believe that has to run for 2 weeks, if I remember correctly. And then we will gather that information, either have announce a special board meeting or try to decide by the next meeting. Any questions or comments?
I guess in the submitting, I would think you would do both mail, and then maybe if we're able to put a link to a form on the website, like that could be populated, like either a fillable PDF or a Google form or something, that we could
Basic
just have
information
fields.
and then maybe a spot for them to write in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Okay.
And I'm happy to draft something, potential fields to be completed to send to the rest
Yeah,
of
they
you.
just need, yeah, basic information. We need a way to verify they live within the school district. obviously.
And MSBA probably has a form that we could use. In fact, they probably have a recommended
Right.
form.
Unfortunately, Sue couldn't be here tonight because of her husband, so we wish Sue the best. She's going through a tough time right now, so a lot of you guys know Sue, so please get a chance to reach out to her and wish her the best. That's all I had. Is there anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Randy. One second into close.